this afternoon? Just a quick welcome to everyone who's joining us on Zoom or on YouTube. The live stream has started. We're going to give this another 3 to 4 minutes before we start introductions and then delve into the discussion. Thank you for joining us today on this Sunday afternoon. So we're going to start in a bit.
كيفك إبراهيم؟
أهلا يا هلا سلامات.
See you soon in Washington.
See you soon. Looking forward.
Sure.
See you soon in Boston too.
See you soon in Boston. And in Damascus, hopefully, Ammar.
سلام سلام.
All right. Hello. My name is Jamal Mansour, and this is episode 2 of Al Muntada Debates. We've had our first episode 3 weeks ago. We should have done every 2 weeks. There were some logistical issues that had to do with my travel, but also with us being able to secure this. on a timely footing. So we're apologizing on being a little late in terms of this episode. However, it's better late than never. And look at the panel that we've assembled. We're going to discuss today Israeli-Syrian relations in light of the recent events of Sueda and the prospects beyond, with my beautiful panel that I'm going to introduce in a second. Al-Muntada Debates is designed to speak to the Syrian American, but also to non-Arab speaking audiences that are interested in the Middle East and in Syrian affairs generally, trying to convey a reasonable, rational debate about things that are topical, but also about general themes related to all things Syrian politics, transition in Syria, and what the prospects and outlook for that is. I'm here to discuss this today with, I'm going to start from Damascus with Dr. Ammar Qahf from the Syrian Forum and from Umran Center. He is the head of Umran Center, and he's joining us from Damascus Live. Thank you very much for doing this. I know you've had a very, very long day, and it is an ungodly hour in Syria. So tonight, thank you for joining us. Dr. Samir Taqi is our panelist as well, joining us from Washington, D.C., if I'm not mistaken, right? And he is the head of the Orient Center. And I've got my good pal and travel buddy, but also recently minted resident fellow at the Atlantic Council on the Syria desk, Ibrahim Al-Asil, joining us also from Washington, D.C., I'm presuming. All right. So welcome to this panel, gentlemen. Thank you for joining us today. I'm going to start in the order that we've just established. I'm going to start with a view from Damascus, and I will direct my first question to Dr. Ammar Qahf. Ammar, my question to you is, first of all, how's the situation right now looking from Damascus in terms of general situation, and then vis-a-vis the current noises about Israel-Syria relations, specifically what's being said about a potential breakthrough in the talks. So tell us about the general situation in Damascus right now, and then delve into that, please. Thank you.
Well, I mean, thank you very much. General situation, the talk on the ground is that, business as usual. People got used to the attacks happening every other day, in fact, every day on several locations. It's unfortunate, but the latest was, I believe, the interview with the president, where he clearly stated that we're managing it basically day to day, that there is no national interest in today, at least, this is what he said, that there is no national interest in establishing a peace agreement or joining the Abrahamic Accords. Actually, he denied, and he said that he will be clear with the people and not have any deals under the table like the previous regime, and so that they are talking to the Israelis to at least ceasefire to something that's close to the 1974 agreement, perhaps an abridged one, where the majority, if not all, of the lands that have been taken since then could be recovered, or there could be an arrangement on those. So it's a very limited scope, in my opinion. And this comes also out of a historic change in the foreign policy doctrine of Syria that was announced by the president, by the foreign minister, that the new doctrine is not going to be zero problems, as said by another country's foreign minister in the past, but more of that we're going to at least minimize and contain enemies and increase our friends. And we don't need to be friends with everyone. We don't need to be in love with anyone, but at least we want to end the state of Syria being a threat to its regional powers, and that Syria is going to be concerned with its domestic policy. Now, with the domestic policy, of course, comes Sueda, which has really entangled everything together back and put the Israeli question back on the front table. on how can we ensure that Israel does not continue to destabilize Syria, and to do that. So there has been an intensive effort. Another angle, of course, is Turkey, and how does that, relations with Turkey fit, and how, maybe that's another theme that you want to ask me about.
Let's park that for a second. I want to just engage with you on something and then move to Dr. Samir Taqi. Thank you for your patience, everyone. You mentioned Sueda, and that was something that I really wanted to tackle. So I'm first of all, I'm trying to park my own opinion aside, and I'm just, as a clarification for all of you, but also for the people watching us today. I'll try to play devil's advocate and try to problematize what each and every one of my panelists will say, not in order
Because for the lack of problems, you're gonna problematize.
I mean, yes, as if we need more problems. I just want to challenge the neatness of some of the conclusions, or some of the answers that you make, in order to open up the scope so that people who have different viewpoints feel represented, number one, but also, number two, to see the intricacies of what this is entailing, in order for us to give as big a picture, as broad a picture as we can. So, speaking to you, Ammar, and I'm going to use first name basis with all respect to all of you. Ammar, you were speaking about Sueda. A lot of people, myself included, for example, consider Sueda as a kerfuffle, as a problematic endeavor that the Syrian interim government went into, with the results being a weakening of the positionality of the Syrian interim government vis-a-vis not only internal players such as the Druze leadership in Sueda, but also the Kurds in northeastern Syria, and more significantly vis-a-vis Israel. So, what do you respond? Is the potential line of thinking? I know you do not represent the Syrian government, but what would you think is the kind of positionality that the Syrian government might have vis-a-vis the view that says, now that after Sueda, the Syrian government, the Syrian interim government, is at a disadvantage vis-a-vis Israel because of the situation in Sueda, is Israel able to extract a higher price for any type of agreement that the Syrian interim government really needs in order for it to re-enter the international fold, help permanently lift the sanctions, improve its situation vis-a-vis the United States? Is Israel going to give away what it had taken over in January and February, as much as the Syrian interim government would want them to? And what gives the Syrian government the understanding that they might be able to do so?
I mean, part of the approach in Damascus is to diversify their relations, and to utilize every relationship that they have with the Americans, with the Turks, with the Saudis, the Emiratis, Azerbaijan, Jordanians, to at least dilute the unilateral conversation with Israel, and to be able to encircle it, and kind of come at it from different angles, and be able to promote the interests of Syria. And I think this is new to Syrians, to watch a government that is trying to at least not haphazardly go into war, and not not offer kind of a freebie sellout agreement in that sense. So it's a very intricate level of balancing act with the regional countries' interests, as well as Syria. And to be frank with the Syrian people, that we have a threat, and that there is a narrative to what happened in Sueda, that many officials, including the president, have admitted that there has been huge mistakes committed, and that has probably made things difficult vis-a-vis Israel. But it's definitely not a justification for the escalation by the Israelis, but a motive to really de-escalate domestically, and to reach out to try and find new approaches to dealing with Sueda and all of the provinces, including discussions that are ongoing today and yesterday with SDF in the Northeast. and that discussions on a new definition of decentralization, perhaps new agreements that could be forged, turning the challenge into an opportunity for further broadening the scope of dialogue with Syrians. I think there are at least some indicators. I'm always going to be analytically cautious, but nevertheless, I think there are at least promises of that sort, and I think that gives people some hope. You can see yesterday in Dar'a the huge welcoming of Belarus by the people of Dar'a, very spontaneous, very local, and it shows you how this solidarity type. I know, I mean, he doesn't necessarily represent all of the Druze, but nevertheless, he's now becoming a very national figure in that sense.
I think not only is he not representative of many Druze, I think he's now persona non grata in
Sueda.
Sueda. I think even it's a danger for his life to even step foot in. So
Yeah,
he's
but
gaining an audience, but he's losing his home base.
Yeah, I mean, but these I mean, once there's de-escalation in Sueda, then you'll have access to. It wasn't just him, also Sulaiman Abdel Baqi as well. But I mean, there are many that are now talking to Damascus. Let's say those are the two that are going publicly about it. Others are talking to Damascus in different ways, and there are now a lot of avenues and channels, in my opinion, which is healthy. I mean, we need to get to a healthy channel of communication that at least de-escalates, that resolves matters one at a time, if not more than one at a time.
Okay. Thank you, Ammar. Dr. Samir, if that's okay.
Oh,
That's okay. Thank
I'm
you.
happy with four.
So piggybacking off of what Ammar was telling us from Damascus. In your view, if what is on offer, if what the Syrian interim government is now negotiating is a limited, circumscript type of security agreement at minimum, 1974 type, even circumscribed according to what Ammar was suggesting. So it's a very limited package that the Syrian interim government is looking for. What do you think is the regional outlook? And I'm specifically targeting right now, before we target the non-Arab players, I'm targeting the Arab players, the main three Arab players that we have in no particular order: UAE, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, all of whom are in certain types either backing or have lower threshold of problems with the current government in Damascus than they used to have in the past. What do you think is the Arab position of these three main players vis-a-vis this type of agreement that Ammar was suggesting the Syrian government is aiming for, or any type of government agreement to that effect with Israel in the coming few months?
Thank you very much. I'm really honored to be your guest. And my opinion is that the big question now is that in the Arab countries, especially in the Gulf countries, is regarding whether, first of all, Syria will allow the expansion of the Pax Israelica in the region. Because the main concern now strategically is no more Iran. Iran now is in a situation of defensive situation. Regarding Syria, especially, even the changes that are happening in Iran themselves, they are no more, the prevailing debate is that they are no more gambling on the role of their proxies in the region. And they are much more focused on raising their own deterrence domestically, etc. They are even saying the Arabs do not know how to fight. They are not good in fighting. So this is so that's why I'm considering, strategically speaking, that the Iranians, at least for the moment, at a tactical level, if things do not deteriorate more, I think Iran is not now the main ring in the string. The main ring in the string is Israel and the Pax Israelica, which means that Israel would like to establish a regional Pax that would impose on everybody
Can I translate Pax Israelica is an Israeli peace, but what you mean really is a hegemony, the hegemony.
Hegemony. Exactly, exactly. That's what's called Pax America, Pax Israelica. So that's the game. And the main concern is that Syria in this weak situation, would it go and become, in a way or another domain of the direct hegemony of the Israelis? Till now, even the Lebanese government is resisting the fact that it would be involved. Even even the Jordanians. So would it become a kind of a domain? This is the first question. The second question is related to whether the Syrians are still interested in living together, which means that this will take us to Sueda again, because before the massacres, nobody dared to speak about Israel. There had been always some, parasites or something, but at the end of the day, the mass position of the Druses was clear. So the main discussion, if the Syrians are not able to live together, how would this influence the regional game? Because the regional game till now is compromised to the Syrian sovereignty, what Israel is requesting, and practically compromised to the Syrian unity. And in that respect, are the Syrians ready to accept this just to preserve the regime? Because this is what Israel is offering in exchange.
My question is, these are very perceptive engagements with what Ammar was telling us from Damascus. I wish to string those into the positionality of the Arab players. The Arab players are seeing this. I'm sensing a suggestion on your part that this is part of their view of what's happening.
But what happened in Paris, they know it exactly what the Israeli requested. They know it in details, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and we can discuss it if we have time. But at the end of the day, the Arabs are very much, defensive. They do not want to be involved in hindering it, because the game is to get what we are trying to deter is it's not Netanyahu, because what Syria is, it's under the pressure of the Americans that we have gone to and of course the Israeli aggressions. But now the game is that the American mediation is pressuring on Syria practically, because the big game is not is for Israel. It's not for us. What they can offer to keep us alive.
All right. It. I'm going to park this
to the Arab countries, and Turkey is very important here also.
I'll come back to you, but I'm going to just benefit from what you said and ask my travel buddy Ibrahim about the American position vis-a-vis peacemaking. So I saw a video on Witkoff, and who's the emissary, the huge emissary for all of President Trump's peace initiatives, Ukraine, Armenia, Azerbaijan, Middle East. I mean, very light load. And he seems to be very optimistic about trying to achieve peace, and Gaza, Israel, So my question to you is, if you remember our common friend, Dr. Karam Sha'ar, who said we have a president who has the shiny metal object type of attention span. So if he sees something, he thinks that he can get it, he'll pursue it. Once something else flashes, he'll be distracted. If that were the position of the United States foreign policy, and it seems to be that way in some sort of sense, how can the Arab players and the Syrian interim government today rely on American protection vis-a-vis Israel hegemony in the region while talking to one another to achieve some sort of agreement. First of all, what type of agreement is Washington interested in? Is it a limited type of agreement that the Syrian government seems to be insistent upon, according to what Ammar is telling us? Or is it a type of agreement that goes above and beyond and becomes part and parcel of the Abrahamic Accords? And then what about the type of sustainability you think can we speak about in terms of American foreign policy? So not a biggie.
Thanks, Jamal. It's great to be with you and really great to share this event or this platform with dear Samir and dear Ammar. Big question indeed, and the change that happened in Syria and the region is huge to start with. Like today, we're having this discussion. Four of us were Syrians. One of us is actually in Damascus, and nobody is concerned about what we say and what we don't. So this change was huge. I don't think Israel fully captured that change to start with inside Syria. And before we delve into your question and try to take it into smaller parts to answer it, because I think big part of what's happening today is what seems to be a misunderstanding from the Israeli side of what's happening inside Syria. Of course, it's not a clear cut. I'm not saying that if we put on an Israeli lens, it would make sense to do A or B. But I'm just saying, if we look at the statements and the actions coming out from Israel, we don't see that they actually match what we hear in Damascus and what we witnessed, not only on the government level, but also on the people level, especially December 8th onwards, which started to change recently as well. Now, back to your question on the region and the United States. Of course, the United States will not protect anyone in the region from Israel. That's not part of what the United States does or a priority for them. The United States wants to stabilize Syria. It created a new approach to Syria after the collapse of the regime.
May I interrupt? I just want
Mhm.
to reiterate what you just said, because this is something that's going around, that's making the rounds along a lot of people who are concerned, Syrians who are living abroad, specifically in the Syrian American community. Some people are very concerned that the Americans want to destabilize Syria. Is that what I heard from you? Is there is a desire, there is a stated objective by the United States that there is stability, that there be stability in Syria? Did I correctly understand you here?
Yes, you did. And I think the other misconception in Syria, that's probably more problematic than that one, because I do believe that the United States wants to stabilize Syria, and they're actually dedicating lots of their diplomatic effort to that. But the misconception is that if the United States wants to stabilize Syria, many assume Syria will be stabilized. Well, not really. The situation is way more complicated than that. For domestic and regional factors, and that's something the United States has missed repeatedly in its strategy, not only in the Middle East, but if we look at the American strategic calculations, in many times they don't understand the weight for domestic and regional factors at sensitive points, and they don't factor them in within the equation the way they should, and that's why many times they miscalculate. But yes, to clarify that again, I do believe that the administration, at least the top of the administration, President Trump, his strategy is clear: to stabilize Syria, to support Syria, to keep Syria unified. But of course, if we go in depth, there isn't yet clear lines about how that will happen, because it was a reaction. Things happened in a surprise to everyone, to Assad, to al-Sharia, to Israel, to Trump, Crown Prince bin Salman, President Erdogan. Everyone was surprised, but that's the general line. And then the United States is also reacting and recalibrating, because what happened on the ground and what's happening in Israel wasn't anticipated by the American decision makers and policy makers. And now they are trying to actually figure out what could work and what can't work inside Syria, including to keep Syria one political entity. How would that political entity look like? Because when you talk about Israel now, the domestic and the regional, they overlap, and we cannot separate them. How Syria will look like and what governance system will happen in Syria will be shaped by Israel, and what happens in Syria and the governance system will also, in a way, shape Israel, or at least the relationship with Israel between Syria and Israel.
Well, I mean, you've handled this big question very well. Thank you, Ibrahim. I have more questions brewing, but I'll keep them in mind. I'll go back to Ammar in Damascus. Don't want you to get bored or complacent. So my question to you is, one of the things that happened is because of Sueda, right? There had been, according to Russian media at least, there had been several invitations that were extended to the foreign minister to visit Russia, that the Syrian interim government basically sort of brushed off or ignored, never replied, never confirmed, never unconfirmed. Following Sueda, all of a sudden, the foreign minister had the urge to visit Moscow and go and talk to the Russians. And there were noises about this being part of an arrangement for President Shara, the interim president, to make the trip to the UNGA because he needed the Russians and the Chinese to lift the designation of a terrorist group and a terrorist that was put on by the UNSC. This, to me, speaks about a re-engagement between the Syrian interim government and Russia today, on things that are related to Syria's regional role, part of which is Israel. What do you think is the Syrian thinking? Again, I am not accusing you of belonging to the Syrian government or knowing exactly what they know, but since you are close and you can analyze this, what is your educated guess on the line of thinking inside the current Syrian interim government vis-a-vis Russia and its potential role as a leverage, potentially, maybe, or otherwise, in terms of their negotiation with the Israelis? Is there any kind of relationship, or is this something that I'm making up here?
No, I mean it's part of the approach of balancing relations. Maybe the timing was chosen because they need them, and as Ibrahim mentioned, I mean this is it's not one straw, it's not one element that makes the salad mix good or bad. It's so many factors that keep changing every second, and so it's not only the Americans that influence, it's not only the Arabs, it's not only the Israelis. The Israelis think that they could just go in and do it all alone and not think of consequences. They completely underestimate the Syrian public opinion. They completely underestimate Arab unsatisfaction. Yes, the Arabs are not going to fight back. The Turks are not going to create a war with Israel over Syria, and they have notified the Syrian government in that sense. But it's a push pull. It's a step forward, a step backward. It's realignment of positions, entry points. It's you mentioned. I mean, just in your question, you jumped from Israel to the UN General Assembly to this and that. Everything influences something else. There's also the Russian Arab Summit coming up on October 15, which President Shara was invited to attend. I'm not sure yet whether that's going to happen or not, but there is an invitation that has been given to the president to attend the Arab Summit, which will be attended by many Arab leaders in that sense on October 15, which is 3-4 weeks after the UN General Assembly. So it's so many things that are, one step over one step, one piece over one piece. And you hope at the end that there is a salad mix at the end, but you never know. It could explode with sodium and water on the mix,
Just a follow-up question. When I was in Damascus, invading your offices for a bit, we had a discussion pre and post debate with Qutaiba Edelby, and part of what I noticed personally was there's the biggest thing on the agenda of Syria's foreign relations right now is getting to the UNGA. is getting to the United Nations General Assembly. This is everything is being clocked backwards in Damascus vis-a-vis foreign relations to that particular point. So everybody wants to have President Sharab go to New York, deliver a speech, do the side events, talk to people, be seen with the other heads of state, making Syria's comeback into the international fold a success. And that is why there was also talk, not with Qutayba or anyone, but in the media, that this is also going to be the big moment where there's going to be an announcement of some form of agreement with the Israelis, because that is the big bang, right? My question to you again, since all of this is related, I didn't thank you for accusing me of jumping from one topic to the other. I'm just showing as you said, the intricacies of the salad. And what I'm trying to say here is all these multiple factors that are involved, which do you think is the most relevant to the Syrian interim government right now, to President Shara, the interim president right now, in terms of why he's going for an agreement with the Israelis and what he wants out of it? So, A, what does he want out of it? And B, what is impacting out of all these priorities or all these levels, do you think, in your educated guess, not as an official here?
I mean, it's not uneducated. It's the stated objective is that he wants to focus on reconstructing Syria and rebuilding Syria and getting investments in and helping Syrians rebuild their lives. And so he wants to at least either contain, to eliminate the threat that's coming from the Israelis, or at least manage risks, manage the threat, divert threat, dilute threat. I mean, there's so many terms that are being used by the Syrian government on what they want. Is it diluting, containing? It's all of the above, in my opinion. It's trying to, in some form or shape, put it aside so that they could focus more on what they want for Syria, which is Syria that does not threaten any of its neighbors. Again, it doesn't have to be in love with neighbors, but it cannot be at enemy with. I mean, Syria has been at enemies with Jordan for a long time. And so, I mean, Syria has changed and is trying to start, and that this new phase takes time. It doesn't happen again with a step, because every moment Syria steps on something, it upsets something else, and it's these intricacies of the region, from Iraq to all the way to Lebanon. Everything in Lebanon is shaky, and that's something we need to monitor as well.
Thank you, Ammar. So, Samir, just building off of that, again, we're going to go back to what I was trying to explore, based on the image that you basically complemented what Ammar was saying about the Syrian interior or in Syrian internal situation right now. What do you think is the view in Riyadh? What's the view in Abu Dhabi, and what might be the view in Doha vis-a-vis some form of agreement? You said, you alluded to Paris. If you can just explain what happened in Paris in generalized terms, if you don't want to go into too many details, but also then what it means to the picture that you painted and to what you think is the positionality of each of these very important and impactful Arab capitals vis-a-vis some form of movement on the Israeli-Syrian track.
I think the main thing, we need to add some other countries to your list. We need to add Egypt. We need to add Jordan. And the main issue here is whether, as I said, Syria would be able to be domestically stabilized by a consensus, by a new social contract, etc., etc. This is the issue. But at the end of the day, the situation now is pivoting toward more concern about Syria trying to please everybody. And this is impossible. Of course, we love to have very good relations with Jordan, but Jordan is very much concerned about the culture which is being injected in the Syrian army, which is a jihadi culture. We have the books. about
at least this is the stated concern of the Jordanian authorities.
It doesn't matter whether we shake their hands. The same for Egypt. The same for the United Arab Emirates. So it doesn't matter if we shake their hands, if we make MOU with them, or with the United Arab Emirates, or with Saudi Arabia. But the main concern, what would be the model of the Syrian state? Would it be a new ideologic state based on the culture which is being injected now in the Syrian army? This is one thing. The other thing is how stable would Syria be? And there I would like to mention that this the United States is not now working on nation building. They are watching. They are seeing whether would it work, a Syrian unity now or not. So there is a plan B if something fails. And one of the plan B is what happened in Sueda. So I think the problem with the Syrian diplomacy is that they got this impression that they can please everybody. And, at a certain moment, it's not true that Turkey and Israel are not on the verge of friction. They were on the verge of friction, not only in Sueda, but also in Azerbaijan. And now between Iran and Azerbaijan. So it's becoming everybody against everybody. And the battle in the region, the best thing for Syria to do is really to position itself among the Arabs, because they don't have any ambition, etc. So this is another.
So the Arab umbrella as a protection against the non-Arab players in the region with some security dominance.
The Arabs, the non-Arabs, would it be the Turks? Would it be the Israelis? So from one day we make a military agreement with the Turks, then we amend it, make it because of the objections of the Israelis. Then we go to the Israelis, and then the Turks are not happy with the extent of what had happened in Paris, or even with Russia. So we can go into detail if you want, but this is my regarding the Arab country on which you asked me about. It's wait and see, give the chance for a success, if possible, back from behind, try to save it. Otherwise, there is a plan.
So I want to give you the chance to inject your comment. No. I want to give you. I want to give you the chance to inject your comment. Just park it for a second. I just want to ask a question vis-a-vis this particular part of it. So what you're saying, Samir, is basically that the current interim Syrian government is trying to please everyone, and that this is an impossible task.
But they are discovering that this is not possible.
Right.
And so that's why we are now in a situation that Syria needs to redefine its alliances. That's why I'm suggesting the Arab, and to build up even its security. So domestically, there are two problems. One is the army, the education, the model of state. Second, whether there would be a new reconciliation. I'm very happy that Ammar was discussing with Qasad new suggestions regarding the decentralization of Syria. And then we can go to the regional game. The regional game is still aflame. It's still, very hot.
Quite. My question to you would be, and keep this in mind, if you can take note of it and think about it while we get back to Ammar and then to Ibrahim, is if you were in the shoes of the decision maker and taker in Damascus right now, which of these two regional hegemons would you rather have not like what you've done? Which price would you pay? Would you pay the Israeli price or would you pay the Turkish price?
Or the Arab. We can discuss it. I'm ready.
Just keep that in mind. Ammar, you had something to say, and I'm very sorry to thank you for your patience.
I mean, this was in the recent meeting between President Shara and the Arab media journalists that came primarily from Gulf countries. uh, a quote came out that made the headlines, obviously, that he is not an extension to any Islamic jihadi movement. I know statements are statements, but they mean something, both domestically and regionally. And then that we are not an extension to the Arab Spring as well. So, meaning that he will play by the Arab playbook. And I think that was a message primarily to the Arab countries. But I think he's, the Syrian
And
government.
spoken on Sky News Arabia, that makes a huge
Yes,
deal, right?
yes, thank you. I think they already realized that there is no kumbaya, love all, be friends with all, but that the reality is you have to give and take, you have to maneuver, you have to, find a spectrum of options. But they're trying to avoid that end spectrum, which is going to war and the flames, burning them. So even the issue of cooperation agreement with Turks, it was preceded by an agreement with the Syrian Defense Ministry to train Syrian officers for 3 years, not a 2-week training in Turkey, but a 3-year training in Saudi Arabia. And so there is a balance, I think, at least the approach. Mistakes happen, but at least the philosophy behind it has been a very intricate balancing between Saudi and Turkey, understanding that Syria has been at enemy with Turkey for a long time, and that's not healthy for the stability of Syria. So they don't want to be fully in the only. They don't want to be only in the alignment with Turkey, but they also realize that they need to be friends with Turkey. So it's a some form. So the agreement was not a joint defense agreement, but it was more a defense cooperation agreement. And I think those terms mean different things in politics. While with Saudi Arabia was a 3-year agreement to train, and the same thing with training diplomats in Jordan and Emirates and other countries.
But that was
Go
prior
ahead.
to Sueda. Things do change.
No, it was what was prior? The training was after.
Maybe post Sueda, maybe in the coming few weeks, Turkey might pressure the Syrian government to revise these terms. These are not set in stone, is what I'm trying to say. But that's a very good point that you made, Ammar, is basically that interim President Shara, went on media and basically said, I am not an extension of either political Islam in its jihadist versions or non-jihadist versions, and I am not an extension of the Arab Spring, thereby basically sending a message, at least to the region, I'm not a threat to either of you. If you are, in Abu Dhabi and, is political Islam is your concern, nothing to fear here. If you're Saudi Arabia or Cairo or any other Arab capital that has issues with the history of the Arab Spring and any type of revision of that, there's nothing to fear from me, because I'm going to, as you said, play by the Arab playbook. Which brings me to our friend in Washington, the very patient Ibrahim. Since this is the regional image, and what I understood and gleaned from you, but also from Ammar and Samir, is basically there is a sort of kind of American strategy of sorts. There's no nation building, Samir was telling us. I agree with that. But there's sort of kind of a stabilization, as you said, of Syria. But as Samir was saying, there's also always a plan B and a plan C and maybe a plan D. There's no... It's very important for me that you clarify to all the people who are listening to us, because everybody, if you listen to the media, if you go on, any kind of conversation with every Plato and Aristotle in the Syrian, field of vision, everybody knows politics better than everybody else, and everybody tells you, well, the American plan is, and then gives you their own scenario. Do you see an American plan in Syria, or is this playing by ear? There's a stated objective of maintaining Israel's stability, of trying to get to a no conflict zone, by which it doesn't mean establishing, I think, any type of just or lasting or durable or politically, balanced agreements. stabilizing the lines as they are right now and no fighting. Am I correct if I say that, or is there some other view from Washington that you can tell us?
So for the United States, clearly that President Trump, in an ideal world, he would love to wake up in the morning and say Syria joined the Abraham Accords, right? But also President Trump wanted to acquire Greenland and annex Canada. And there are so many like ideas that are way
إلا
more
Canada.
difficult like Canada for you as for you in Canada. And so that's absolute, and that's the stated objective. The United States is not secret about it at all. But to reach, even if we say that Israel and Syria at one point will sign an agreement, first, even a peace agreement might not be part of Abraham Accords collection for different reasons. Uh, Specifically, that everybody who signed the Abraham Accords was not actually at war with Israel and didn't have land or territorial contest. Unlike Syria, it's a real and an actual conflict with the Golan Heights, and then the buffer zone and the new occupied areas in inside Syria. But that takes me, Jamal, and if you allow me to make a few points based on the discussion and what
Please.
Amara and Samir said to build on their great comments. So when we talk about, because in the day-to-day debate in Syria and around Syria, everybody refers to an agreement between Syria and Israel, even though including the one that we might actually witness around UNGA. But what kind of agreement? Is it a ceasefire with everything as is? Nobody moves anywhere on the ground, but Israel and Syria agrees, and mainly Israel, that it's not going to strike Syria anymore, because there are no attacks from the Syrian side. So that's one way for an agreement. Another type of an agreement that could be with security arrangements between them, things they agree on, who watches what, and who is allowed to do what, where, and when. That's also another type of agreement. The third type of agreement could be 1974 and the disengagement agreement, to go back to that. But that means Israel would withdraw from areas that has taken recently, which I think is very
Highly
unlikely.
improbable.
Highly improbable, because even if we talk about also a final agreement, what line would be? Is it 1974? Is it 1967? Is it 1949? Is it 1923? There have been so many different lines, and Dr. Samir is one of the great authorities, by the way, on the negotiations, the technicality of the negotiations, which we hasn't touched yet, like just to show how far we are from an actual and a full agreements between both sides. But around UNGA, we might have some sort of an announcement. I know there is an interest to do that, even though I don't think that actually the conditions on the ground are ripe. Because to move, and quickly allow me, Jamal, to talk about, if we could also explain how probably the Israelis think, like to put that lens and look at it. First,
Please.
they are not impressed. They are not impressed that President al-Shara will be at UNGA, because the Iranians, they always go to UNGA. For Syrians, that is a big achievement, because the bar was very low. But for any other country to go and speak at UNGA, everybody goes and speak at UNGA. Assad chose not to, because he is focused regionally and he didn't want to antagonize anyone internationally. And for whatever reasons, he chose not to go anymore. But Iranians, with all their isolation, they keep going and they give the speeches. Even Guevara gave a speech at UNGA, Patria o Muerte. I mean, so UNGA is for everyone. But it does show the new government is very different from Assad, and they want to engage. And I think that's something the Israelis are also missing. They are not seeing that. But why they are missing that? First, you have post-October 7th paranoia. Why? And also I would add some flavor to that, because also they heard from Hamas for a few years before October 7th that they are just interested in governance. They were given promises.
So you're
And
saying that their paranoia comes from once bitten, twice shy. We've tried an Islamist telling us we don't want to do anything to you, and then they were, according to their narrative, obviously they were bitten by them, so they do not trust Shara, whatever he says.
that's how I could probably explain why they are acting the way
Again,
they are.
we're playing
And
devil's
I might be
advocate
wrong,
here. I'm
but
just remarking
yes.
to our viewers, we're playing devil's advocate, not out of some kind of ulterior motive on our behalf. We're trying to position ourselves in the Israeli mindset to understand it. That's all we're doing here. It's a mental exercise. Yes, go ahead, Ibrahim.
So you have post-October 7th paranoia and not to trust whatever an Islamist tells you. And then you have the disorientation of victory, when you can actually strike in Tehran and in Beirut and in Damascus and all of that,
And
you
pay no
also
price.
get disoriented, right? So you miscalculate as well. And then you ask this question, which Israelis ask in all peace talks: am I safer with an agreement or am I not? So that's an answer the Syrians need to convince them. Why would be safer with an agreement while they can actually strike whenever they want, wherever they want, taking things into their own hands? So the Syrian narrative has been, we don't even have an army to attack you, which is absolutely true. But also from the Israeli lens, well, if you don't have an army to attack me, do you have an army to keep everyone else in check?
From
And prevent
attacking
an
me.
attack from attacking me? Because even they would say, even if I trust you and you really don't want to attack me, I don't know if you can actually prevent others from attacking me. These questions, Jamal, these questions are part of the actual negotiation, the real talks that would happen need to address these questions too, and let alone, of course, the Druze factor and Sueda and Turkey and all the other things that Ammar and Samir raised.
Let's not let alone the Druze factor and what happened in Sueda. After Sueda, so if we are to trust the official government narrative, which was explained to us at the Muntada debate by none other than our friend Qutayba Idilbi, very eloquently so. The narrative is, we came in to stop infighting, but things slipped out of our hands. Ahmed Dalati, who's the head of the security forces that went into Sueda, also explained that the soldiers were untrained, under-equipped, still in, it's a fresh force. We can't always, control the outcome, etc., etc. If you're an Israeli watching this, and if we take things at face value, prima facie, right? The Israelis don't know what's happening on the inside, and they take this at face value. This does not look good. You're not in control. You can't control people from Arab tribes from going into Sueda. What's a guarantee that I can have from them attacking me if they're angry about something, if they want to play solidarity with the Palestinians, etc., etc. So how does Washington, you think, how does the Beltway look at this? Are they concerned with this kind of Israeli type of thinking, number one? And number two, do they have an answer to what you think?
Yes, I think it's a real divergence between the current administration priorities in the region and the Israeli ones. Because while everything you described, they probably both agree on the description or the diagnose. From the United States, for them, they do want to give Syria time. They believe that Syria really needs time, not only to build actually command and control, but for Syrians to figure things out among themselves without fueling this. Because while it's really brutal and violent, all of these events, it's a way that Syrians are meeting each other probably with the worst way possible. But Syrians now, to answer Samir's question, they are like, this is part of the violent way of dealing of the question, do we want to live together or not? What happened in Sweden was brutal and absolutely horrific. One line of thinking could be, let Syrians figure that out. The other line of thinking, that's the first one, is the American one. They don't have borders with Syria. The Israelis, they think differently, and they do have a Druze minority, even though that's, of course, won't be the, it is a real factor. Like, I don't want to say, because also there are theories, no, it's a total lie. No, I do think it's a real factor of the thinking of the Israeli establishment, but also it's not alone. I mean, if it was against the government priority, they wouldn't go with that. Otherwise, they would also understand why so many Arabs and Muslims, they also sympathize with people in Gaza. The same way the Druze in Israel sympathize with the Druze in Sueda. But these are separate nations, and borders should be respected. And a domestic matter should remain a domestic matter. All it will get more complicated. And I would conclude with this point, and I have highlighted it a couple of times, but I do think it's important that I think Israelis in general, they are not getting how pragmatic this government is, and Syrians in general are as well. I'm not saying Syrians don't sympathize with Gaza and Palestinians in general, but also I haven't heard any Syrian who wants to go to war against Israel. They see these are two different things. They want to rebuild their country. They think that's a priority. And they think actually they haven't fought a war with Israel for a long time until December 8th onwards and the Israeli airstrikes. And I think that's really a missed opportunity there.
So I'm getting to you, Ammar. I'm just getting off of what Brahim was saying, basically. The last sentiment. If you can please explain that to our fellow Syrian Americans, but also to the non-Syrian Americans who are watching us. These seem to be in the world of Palestinian solidarity right now, but also in terms of the kind of, let's say, polarized positionality vis-a-vis everything in the Middle East, specifically the Israeli war on Gaza right now. To be polarized and antagonistic and anathema statements to make, that the Syrian population en masse truly and actively supports Gaza in its heroic resistance to the Israeli aggression, but at the same time wants absolutely nothing to do with any kind of Syrian involvement to be seen anywhere near any kind of enmity vis-a-vis Israel. These manage to happen in the same mindset of a lot of Syrians. I'm not talking about government officials only, but also people on the street. If you're talking to, your falafel guy, you're talking to your taxi driver, you're talking to people on the streets, they make these two statements, which sound really contradictory, work together. That we at the same time hate everything and abhor everything Israel is doing in Gaza, but at the same time are okay with signing some form of agreement with the Israelis and ending this. And out of this, I'm going to ask you, if the statement that Ibrahim just made, which I happen to agree with, is somehow true, my question is, how hard will it be for the presidency, the current interim presidency, to sell an agreement to the Syrian population, but more importantly, to members of all the factions that have not yet been integrated completely or fully? That's not my words, that's even the words of people in the government, in official statements, that the integration process has not yet happened. The SSR has not yet happened. So in this sense, how hard will it be for the current interim government to sell this type of agreement that comes with strings attached, not a lot of territory returned, not a full peace, but also not a full disengagement? How hard will it be for them to sell it to the Syrians in general, but also to the people inside the various factions, do you think?
I mean, listen, Jordan signed an agreement how many years ago? The Jordanian public
31 years.
The Jordanian public still do not agree with what happened. I mean, this is governments make deals, and the people don't. I mean, today the Arab Center announced a public poll that happened that they conducted in Syria for over 4,000 people, and they asked this question: are you in favor of a peace agreement with Israel? And it was the overwhelming, I think 74% was against it, maybe 14, and the other, I don't know. And I think that's telling that the Syrian public is not in tune with that. But also, the Syrian president said, "I will that we have occupied territory, that he recognizes that's something that he cannot overstep and he cannot overlook, and that at this point, it's a security arrangement. It's 2.0 of 1974 as an intermediate arrangement, not necessarily as the end goal of what's happening. It's something to contain." And then on the question of, I wanted to say, I mean, after Sueda and the view from Israel saying that the government cannot control its own people and it may not be able to control radical elements and so forth. I mean, just after this took place, there were two operations by the Americans, the Turks, and the Syrian military, specific surgical strikes on terrorists in Al Bab and Sarmada, with U.S. commandos and U.S. drones and so forth. I mean, yes, that was a good show, good timing, and so it was a message that we are cooperative, that we can control things. And then the second message, although it may not be, very, very positively looked upon by some, is that they stopped the war in Sueda. They stopped this at the end of the day. They stopped the escalation of violence that was going up, and the graph was going up in terms of deaths in the coastal areas, and it went down. So they take also credit for being able to stop it. They may not be able to stop it from happening or from the intensity of it, but they were able to at least pull it back and put it back to its original location. And now, at least, and now they also working around with many political channels to diffuse that. So I think it's much bigger than this question, and there's so many things that are still being done.
Question, Ammar. A few days ago, interim president opened up Damascus International Fair, the 62nd round, which is also part of the attempt to signal that Syria is back. Syria is back in action. It's a different Syria. It's rebuilding. Don't watch this space. Sueda, don't watch this space. Issues in the coastal region. Focus on what we would like to focus on, which is we're rebuilding, etc. And it was a big show of a comeback. On the same day, not a mere 10 kilometers away, even less, the Israelis sent a commando force and made sure that the world knew, right? There was a bombing in El Kiswe, and there was a talk about a commando force infiltrating, waltzing around for 3-4 hours and then, taking off. I don't know if they've achieved anything or if they meant to achieve anything, if it was just a spoiler for the show. Is this Israel trying to flex its muscle in order to gain leverage in the talks that are still ongoing, you think? Or is it just a spoiler to sort of, excuse my French, pee on the parade of the Syrian comeback at all times, trying to lessen the impact of the positive message that the Syrian government is trying hard to do?
I don't think it has to do with the. I don't think it has to do with that. I think it has to do with a systematic messaging that the Israelis are trying to say that this region will be weapon free. This region will be accessible to our army. We're going to flow from all the way from Israel all the way to the Iraqi border. This channel, this thing, they're trying to exert their hegemon, their presence, in my opinion, yes, the timing could have been timed, to do this as a
but the
side
message
comment.
exceeds
but the primary
that. It's
message
just
is that we want this channel.
Right.
And we don't want this area to have any weapons, any intelligence. You go into Autostrad al-Mazze and Cellcom comes up and you have the Israeli cell phone all over. And I mean, that's what they want to exert, this hegemon presence.
Flexing their muscle and just saying we're boss. Correct. Okay. So Samir, since this is something that the Israelis want, I happen to concur with Ammar's.
Israel is not flexing only its muscles. Israel won't accept any agreement that limit its security access, information access, information, communication access. They are getting it. They consider themselves already controlling. And what they had done in the latest attack, and this is very much alarming, that
Mhm.
they pretended that there had been a spying instrument that had been implanted by the Turks, which shows again this dimension of friction. And they wanted, and they said it's very sensitive.
Thank you for anticipating my question. What is happening between Israel and Turkey? If you were, then I go back to my question that I asked you a few seconds ago. If you were, God forbid, now sitting in the presidential palace and having to take a decision on who you would like or not to like, who you could afford to have angry at you, what part would you choose?
I will choose to be very much in harmony with my people. Reconciliate with the Syrian people. This is the biggest force for Syria, to allow the rewriting of our social and
Political contract.
political contract, social and political contract. This will render Syria impenetrable. And then Turkey, by de facto, will have a major role in the future in Syria, but not militarily. Because whoever will hegemonize Syria will be hegemonizing Lebanon, Jordan, Iraq. This is the equation. You remember the past, and everybody knows the past. So Turkey having a role in the buildup of the Syrian army would be very much, and that's why even the United States offered to intervene and in the armament, in the buildup of the Syrian army, etc., etc. Regarding Israel, I think Israelis will not give us anything. They will not stop. They can give us the 4 stations. They can give us but the Mount Haramon they will stay in.
Yes.
And it is Trump who gave them the Golan. Do you imagine that any discussion will happen about the Golan now? So there is no peace process. There is no Abraham Accord. This cannot be done. We should say it. And my advice is not to go with the Israelis to any amendment to the 1974. Any amendment, because it is backed by the Security Council. It is backed by the international community. What happened is that when the Israelis came back to Hafez al-Assad and told him that we need this issue about Sam to be away from our border 10 kilometers, he imposed that this disarmament area would be on both sides. And so what we need, and then there had been an agreement between Kissinger and Hafez al-Assad that this demilitarized zone will be on both sides. Second, it had been an agreement with the United States. Why don't we go in this path? No amendment to the 1974. This is for Israel. But stabilizing the borders, controlling the borders, and making an amendment that will not affect our sovereignty. Damascus is not like Mount Haramon. It's not like, already there is a pass now between Israel and Sueda. It's going on. So we are preferring to negotiate with the Israelis, not to negotiate with our nation, our people. That's my point, is that we need, first of all, to come from the political and national contract. But then with the Israelis, there is no way to have a peace now. They cannot offer us anything.
Is this the viewpoint you think? I mean, yes, Amman and Cairo are relevant.
Mr. Shara will play it. Everybody in the Arab world is watching how he played. Nobody will intervene, but then it will be an open game.
So,
because what we need to know now, Israel considers that any country in the world that support the two-state solution is a threat to its existence. And at the top of that is Saudi Arabia. So the contradiction now in the region has become between Saudi Arabia and Israel vis-a-vis the Pax Israelica regarding the two-state solution and the certain role of the Arab countries within the rehabilitation of Gaza, Syria, Lebanon, etc.
So building off of this very perceptive point that you've just made, that there is a basic fundamental contradiction between the Saudi vision for the region and between the Israeli vision for the region.
Okay.
The Israeli vision...
One notion, if you please.
Yes, please.
Arabs do gamble that even if Netanyahu goes, this kind of policy will continue. Now Israel is becoming more and more fanatic. And this is important.
If I were Israel right now, God forbid, right? If I were Israel right now, I'm at the top of my game. I have the hegemony over the region. I can exercise this hegemony nicely or in a nasty manner, but I will still exercise my hegemony. In this sense, the Saudi, for example, specifically as the biggest, most weightiest nation in terms of its strategic, but also political presence, economic presence in the region, alongside obviously no lesser players than Qatar and Emirates. These players, if the narrative that you're telling me is what I need to go by, are watching right now and saying there's a fundamental contradiction between the type of region that we want and the type of region that Israel is leading to. If that is the case, then how do you explain what you were just saying, that they're sitting there and watching how he plays it? Ahmed Shara. This is too dangerous for them to let...
not too dangerous. The game is much bigger and much more important than Syria. Let's say it as plainly.
Okay.
What happened in Riyadh and Abu Dhabi was an agreement that America will build an alliance. Now this is new. What happened in Riyadh and between Trump and the leaders in Saudi Arabia is totally contradicting what Israel is doing now. And the agreement is that Mr. Trump will push and really allow in Gaza a certain Arabic role in the reconciliation and the buildup of the Palestinian Authority, and the buildup even in the rehabilitation of the Syrian economy, in Lebanon, in Iraq. That in a way or another, the Arab Gulf countries will have a major role in the reconstruction, etc., etc. But now with this, so they are waiting for a large extent what America will do, because at the end of the day, Mr. Netanyahu and those extremists in Israel are destroying the American capability of building alliances in the region. And what they are afraid of is a new Jamal Abdel Nasser.
Well, I'm hoping that they're not afraid of all Jamals right now. But thank you for this. So, Ibrahim, based on what Samir was just telling us, so basically Israel is sabotaging what Samir was suggesting was the Riyadh and Abu Dhabi consensus, basically, when Trump came down and he, in a sort of, agreed to some form of regional alliance that carries a United States weight behind it, where the Arabs can play a more active role in reshaping the Middle East.
Abraham Accords are frozen now.
Okay, and the Abrahamic Accords are frozen right now, which is also another one of Trump's achievements. And this is all being done by Bibi Netanyahu, who is doing this without being stopped or objected to actively by the United States. What is happening in the United States? Is this a sign of the lack of foreign policy in the United States? Is this a president whose attention span, who has hegemonized decision-making in the State Department and all things foreign relations, and whose attention span is 3 seconds long? What are we talking about here? How is this happening? This sabotaging of the United States' strategic interests in the region. Voice on, please, Ibrahim.
From the Israeli perspective and what they are telling their American counterparts, they are not actually, like, from their perspective, they are not sabotaging the American interest. They're actually protecting the American interest, as they say, we understand the region, you don't understand the region. Let us tell you how we live and survive in this region. So almost all the reasons, Jamal, you said, and the
Does
options,
this voice have resonance?
it's all of the above. It does. It
No.
absolutely does. Yes, indeed. And but also, I think it's all of the above, because also the US does not have the bandwidth or the interest to micromanage things in the region.
Mhm.
They don't. And part of why they want to stabilize Syria
Is to get out
because
of
they want to leave.
micromanaging anything.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They're like, we will stabilize. We want to deal with one person, which I think was too quick, too soon, by the way. But again, because it's for their resources, it's not the Syrian interest in mind, it's the American interest, right? Nation states. So they look and they want Syria to stabilize as quick as possible. They want Saudi, Turkey, and Israel to be happy. And they
the
want to
peace
get
and
out.
the Nobel
And
Peace
it
Prize
can't.
won't hurt, right?
100%. And it can't. As in the beginning, when Samir and Ammar were discussing that, and with you, that the current government in Syria cannot make everyone happy. The United States also cannot make everyone happy in the region. Specifically, when we talk about the Arabs, the Turks, and the Israelis, it cannot work. So yes, they are sabotaging in that sense the American approach, but also, do they have the bandwidth? President Trump decreased the number of people working at the National Security Council from 400 to 150. So you already have way smaller and slimmer apparatus working on foreign policy in the United States. And at the end, not only in this region, everywhere, when you talk about great powers, China, Russia, and the United States, at the end, regional actors, the final say is for the regional actors. Any understanding between Syria and Israel, the United States will be in the room for sure. Specifically because both sides, the Syrians and the Israelis, wanted to be in the room. It has a natural role to play. But the United States cannot engineer this solution. It needs to be engineered actually by the Syrians and the Israelis. And that takes me to a point about what kind of agreement any government, but of course now this government led by President al-Shara, can sign and Syrians can accept. I think one major issue here, if Syrians would understand any agreement, if it's for the survival of Syria or the survival of the new regime. And this is one of the most important aspects. And how they want understanding, it depends on other domestic issues happening and who made the decision, how the decision was debated among Syrians in the legislative branch, in the media, how much actually the government communicated with the people directly. I think this government truly is very pragmatic, and this is a huge opportunity. I also think they have a huge problem with communication. Domestically and regionally, they are much better on foreign policy, way much better on foreign policy. But domestically, not only I think there have been missteps, I think many also of the right steps were misunderstood because they were not communicated. And that's not an easy thing to do. You cannot just like do that in a few weeks and like build a way to communicate with the people, and especially in a deeply divided and fragmented nation like the Syrian nation is today. But that's something that needs to be worked on. And finally, a point that you raised early on about Syrians and how they look at the Palestinians and Gazans and the relationship with Israel, and that they don't want war. Syrians don't want a war with Russia. They don't disagree on how they feel towards Russia. But these are separate things. Not only that, like they don't even ask for Assad to be handed back. Like that's really like probably priority number 50 on the Syrian feelings now, because of how much priorities they have. Same with Iran. Nobody is calling for a war against Iran. And so let alone that, and they know that the Iranian regime might actually change at any point, let alone that there is an understanding that Israel will be there and it's a neighbor. And we have to actually coexist one way or another. So how they feel and what they think about Israel is different than what they would accept as an agreement. As Ammar said, there are actually different examples in the region. And I would say Syrians, because of their socioeconomic background and political economy and geopolitics of Syria and their experience with war, they are the least probably group in the Middle East they want to war at this point. They are really war avoidant and they are looking inward. They want to rebuild. They want to solve their issues. They want to have schools for their kids.
They want to have running water. They want to have running electricity. They want to have roads that they can drive on.
Yes.
The
And they know
challenges are
what
legion.
a war is. Because when people like protest and they want war and they haven't lived a war for generations, is different than every Syrian who could distinguish between the sound of a Russian missile and the Syrian missile. Like they lived it, it's in their bones. They know what a war is. That's why they don't want a war. And that's actually where the opportunity comes. We are talking about the challenges and the risk and the complexity. But also, I want always to balance and say there is also an opportunity, and we need to see that.
So I'll ask a question to all three of you, and I want an answer from each one of you from their own angle. The single most pressing question for me right now is, since you mentioned Iran, Ibrahim, you made the sin of mentioning Iran, so thank you for doing it. Iran, Israel only recently got out of each other's hair, right? But there is now renewed talk about, so I read something by Stephen Walt the other day. Foreign Policy wrote something about the round two coming potentially between Israel and Iran, because the zero-sum type of situation that they're locked in will not allow an avoidance of another kinetic round of sparring between Israel and Iran, albeit at a disadvantage for Iran right now, doing it maybe from within its borders, but with the flexing Israel in the region, it will want to finish off that round. My question is, if that were a situation that were to reconflagrate, if we were to see a renewal of Iran-Israel fighting, what would that do to the interim Syrian government's desire to go into an agreement with Israel? If this happens between now and the UNGA, for example, which is the date that everybody's setting on their agenda for some type of agreement to be reached between Israel and Iran and Syria. If there were a reconfiguration of the situation, Netanyahu eggs for it, pushes for it, etc., etc., what would that mean for the Syrian government right now and its potentiality of?
Your video stopped.
We lost the last sentence.
You were freezing.
Oh, I'm saying if that were a situation, if we were to have a restart of some form of kinetic warfare between Iran and Israel, what would that mean to the Syrian interim government right now in terms of its approach towards continuing its negotiation with the Israelis or concluding an agreement? What do you think that would mean for this interim Syrian government?
Who is in? You are asking whom?
Ammar, are you with us?
I'm with you. I thought you were asking Samir.
No, I'm asking you. So I'm asking you in order, Ammar, Samir, and then Ibrahim, the same question. What do you think would be the situation vis-a-vis, from the Syrian perspective, how would the Syrian government, the Syrian interim government, deal with a reconfiguration of the Iran-Israel conflict?
I mean, I was hoping to hear from Samir first on this, but because I was still thinking.
Hey, let's put you on the spot.
You did put me on the spot because I'm not.
If you wish to punt, that's fine. I can ask Samir first.
About, the situation.
That's fine.
Yes.
That's fine. Can you venture in and answer, Samir?
Yes, definitely. My point of view is that there will be two scenarios. Either will be a long-term confrontation This will change the whole regional paradigm. Or would it be just like a show up of force, controlling, etc.? Because, in my opinion, many countries in the region are going to have WMDs in a way or another.
Mm.
After this Israeli supremacy, many countries are going this. So we'll see. If it goes in a chronic long-term confrontation, I think that the United States will avoid to be totally dragged into it. This is overwhelmingly the position. But then the main factor will be Turkey.
Okay. In what sense?
Because Turkey doesn't have any interest in seeing the Pax Israeli in any context. And Turkey is very much really fluid in its position in vis-a-vis Russia, vis-a-vis Iran, vis-a-vis different. And the game will become very complex. And then the big question will become, will Syria be a battle between those 3 or 4 forces? Again, this is another paradigm. I said at the beginning that I presume that it cannot return to its proxy, and it will not, because.
So my question to you, Samir, is what can the Syrian government do anything to alleviate the risk of it becoming another?
Unite the Syrian people. This is our assets. Do whatever. If you see the consensus that had been done to a lot in many, we made the study that even at certain moment at the beginning, Brahim shared in it, but further on we developed the study to become really 36 wars.
Mm-hmm.
Only the wars that had been ended, the internal war, the civil wars that had been successful in forging a kind of a decentralized state were able to stabilize. Otherwise, it's just like braces under the sand.
Mm-hmm. All right. Brahim, what do you think? Thank you.
I mean, yes, there is the basic level and the complex level that Samir was analyzing. For the basic level, Syria is not going to be on the Iran side. We've seen that during the 12-day war. Syria was totally fine with Israel intercepting the Iranian missiles in its airspace. They didn't even mention the name Israel. They were saying the events when that happened. They didn't object at all. And it was from the Syrian, like we talked about the Israeli perspective, from the Syrian perspective, it was like, you've seen us in action. Like, why do you still not trust us? We didn't like pose any
We kept
threat.
our
We
powder
allowed you to
dry.
use
Why? Yes.
the airspace and all of that. When Foreign Minister of Iran Abbas Araghchi just visited Lebanon, he wasn't allowed to fly in the Syrian airspace, and then he was schooled in Lebanon by President Aoun and Prime Minister Salam, which shows the change. I think Iran is still ambitious in Syria. It's not going to give up on that. That's how they are programmed to think. But I think they also understand that at this point, the forward defense is gone.
Yes.
It's not going to work. They really lost all depth inside Syria, and it showed that 40 years of their regional project in a few months totally collapsed. And I don't think they have an opportunity in Syria. However, back to the complex level, I do think regional realignments could happen, because today Iran is not number one threat strategically for many regional actors. Not because it's friendly or friendlier or less hostile than before, but because it's much weaker than where it was, and it cannot project power. It cannot actually intervene in many areas. So when number one is eliminated, number two is usually the threat that you need to calculate to deal with. And from the Saudi and the Turkish perspective, and that's why probably we could see some divergence in that way. If Israel is seen as a strategic threat, everyone, number two and 3 and 4, might actually converge
Bandwagon.
to work for that.
Okay, Ammar.
I mean, I don't have much to add. I agree with both predictions. It's too much of a hypothetical, but it's definitely going to happen. I mean, in terms of, I still think that Turkey will try and avoid a direct war. There's friction. Friction is managed or mitigated through multiple channels, and they've done it in the past. I don't think Turkey or Turkish political culture, uh, even with the current AK Party, is in a mood of any more escalations. Other than this escalation that happened a few days ago, I know it took them at a surprise, but I think it will escalate, de-escalate, escalate, de-escalate, take a step forward, a step back. At least the military establishment on the ground in Syria understands, the Turkish military establishment understands that it does not want to go at a military escalation. In terms of regional alignments, I think Turkey, in one sense, thinks that since Iran is out of the equation, that it may be put on the fryer, on the frontline fryer by both Israel and others. And so it has systematically taken steps to, although they're always, I mean, Trump told them, hey, you guys took Syria. This is the biggest thing for Syria. But the Turks, at least what I've heard in very high levels, is that they genuinely do not want to be on the front line, to be on the fryer. They understand if they, because that's what happened with Iran, and so they're left in the front, and that's where they really went and aligned themselves with the Emirates, with the Saudis, and they pushed the Syrians to really make that realignment with the Arabs as well, and try to take a step back. Now they're always, these competing agendas within the Turkish policy is that there are agendas that still want and see Syria as their backyard and so forth, but at least the military establishment understands that that's not an option for them, and they want, so far the plans, for example, for the Turkish base in Tadmur has stopped completely and is withdrawn. And they understand that they don't want any presence, or they will not be allowed presence in the south. So they're not challenging that, and I don't think they would. And that really also gives the Syrians some ground for them to establish themselves. I mean, going through DDR and establishing a stable military takes time. It's not something you can train people in 12 days and learn Microsoft in 2 days or something, This is something that requires a systematic training. There is the military academy in Homs is restarting October 1st, at least that's what I'm hearing. And there will be several short and long-term trainings that will take place to existing members that were not originally from a military background. This is part of the beginning of a DDR process, at least the first steps, let's say. So I agree with the notion that yes, the power comes from internal unity, and that needs a lot of work, and that also takes time, unfortunately. And time is of essence. It's like you start with the economics, you end up with the social aspect, social capital, and it's what the chicken or the egg, and you go through both. Unfortunately, I mean, it's a challenge that unfortunately will not happen before time. Without time, I mean.
On this notion, I would love nothing to do more than to spend the rest of my evening with you, fine gentlemen. This is Sunday after all, and it is a very fine conversation that we're having. But I need to
And it's Labor Day in the US. You guys don't
Labor
have
Day in
Labor
the
Day
US.
in Canada, so
it's an ungodly hour in Damascus. I don't want to stop you from your shawarma. So I just want to have a concluding remark by each and every one of you. One thought that you want me to go back home with and our audience on this topic. If you have anything that I haven't asked you that you think is of relevance, of importance, I'm going to start with you, Ammar.
I gave my final thought. I just said the last statement had nothing to do with Iran. So I said
so you're
unite
done
with the people.
Go grab your shawarma. Samir, anything, any parting thoughts, anything that I have not mentioned that
But we need a national reconciliation based on negotiation, not dialogue, on really making real concession to preserve our unity, and then it will be more powerful than everybody. Syria was always
do you
said,
see it coming?
I need to hope. محكومون بالأمل.
So you're hoping, but you don't see the
They
signs
are
yet.
doomed to be helpful.
Let's hope. Keep our fingers crossed. Ibrahim.
This is certainly uncharted territory. It's not, we're not in 48 or 49, we're not in 73 or 74. We're 2025. And anything that needs to be dealt with from that perspective, things have changed so much, specifically between Syria and Israel. I think it's very complicated and very complex, and the likelihood of reaching an agreement is slim. But that's what politics and diplomacy is for, to take on those challenges and try to see what opportunity is there. And finally, to build on what Samir just said, the domestic factor is huge here. This is not only a regional thing. This is absolutely a domestic issue. And if it's not handled well domestically and coupled with also being open to share with others and include others and make them feel included, to put it bluntly, Sunnis alone cannot have peace with Israel. Syrians probably can handle this issue to actually stop the Israeli airstrikes and be able to focus internally. One component cannot do that alone. You need a leadership that actually could rally everyone, that they see whatever is being made on that track is for the Syrian interest. And that's not an easy task, but I still feel that's actually still possible.
Excellent. So on this very hopeful note, I would like to thank you for spending this this beautiful 90 something minutes on discussing what is a problematic, contentious, but also very hopeful fork in the road for Syria and the region. There are dangers. There are certain aspects of risk involved. There's a spoiler in the works. The Israelis are certainly not making it easy for anyone in the region. But there still is an untapped amount of hope. If and when Syrians do figure a way of talking to one another and speak as openly as we have been about issues that are, you know, contentious, not very happy at all times, but openly discuss and see a way forward to all Syrians, because we're all in this together at the end of the day, whether we like one another or not. We are still stuck geographically and historically and in interests together. So this is a hopeful step forward. Part of what Al-Muntada Debates really aims to do is to provide you with the information tapped from the minds of brilliant scholars and people in the public eye. I would like to thank Dr. Ammar Qahaf. I would like to thank Dr. Samir Taqi, and I would like to thank my prof in the house, Dr. Ibrahim Al-Asil, for the excellent amount of information that you gave us, the hope that you left us with, and I would like to see all of you again sometime in the future. As for our viewers, thank you very much for joining Al-Muntada Debates, and look forward to our next talk in 2 weeks' time. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Goodbye.